right, guys, happy Monday. Week 4 recap highlights, some news and notes, some injuries. Going to get you guys covered here and talk about the studs and sucks for NFL Week 4. And I want you guys in the comments to drop a comment. If you're listening in the car, go to YouTube, drop a comment. Who was your stud? Who was your suck? Who crapped the bed on your team that may have screwed your team for NFL Week 4 fantasy football? Studs and sucks. I'm going to rip into every one of the sucks this episode and talk about how bad they were, and they need to be held accountable here on the Fantasy Football Counselor Podcast. If you're new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe and head on over to our sponsor, Manscaped.com, guys. If you haven't tried the underwear, if you haven't tried the trimmer, go do that right now. Manscaped.com. The code you want to use is SHOWERLION20. Save yourself 20% on some amazing products upon checkout. The Lawnmower 4.0 is what I use. Skin-safe technology, rechargeable wireless charging, LED spotlight, waterproof. I've got like 50 features here. Well, not really. There's like 5 amazing features, but the trimmer works. Manscaped.com. It's amazing. SHOWERLION20. Try the trimmer. Try the underwear. Go head over there right now. All right, guys? So let's dive into this, guys, without further ado. Who are the sucks at each position? But even before that, there's some news here I want to cover before we get into that. Now, the main news here is obviously Javonte Williams. There's fear that he suffered a major knee injury. Now, I'm recording this in the morning. The news may have broken by the time you're listening to this. MRI is to be done today. It looks like a serious knee injury. If that's the case, it could be done for the season. So hoping that's not the case, because for me, I've got him in one league, right? And I knew that Melvin Gordon would be a pest. Melvin Gordon was being a pest, and he fumbled the ball significantly. He was being benched. Javonte's coming out, and then he gets hurt. So I'm hoping it's not too serious, Javonte. And if you look at the way that he fell, it didn't look that serious. He came down, but it didn't look like there's any weird twisting. Hopefully, maybe it's a sprain. It's not too serious. It's not, But again, they're fearing that it is serious injury. He was, I believe, carted off. He was on crutches. So, that's a big problem, okay? Other news here real quick. Jahan Dotson, he sustained a hamstring injury in the fourth quarter. Again, is this going to be how long that's going to linger? We don't know. A lot of people have Dotson. Could be a concern. Another major injury here is a high ankle sprain potentially here for, Jonathan Taylor. Now, I didn't factor in necessarily an injury, but I knew there'd be a decline here with Jonathan Taylor going into the season. Sure enough, he has not performed where he should be performing, and now he's got this potential injury. So his availability in week 5 is suspect and question mark here. So a couple things we had to address here before we get into the studs and sucks, all right? So, guys, let me know in the comments below. I want to know, who was your suck of the week? Let's honor them. Let's talk about them, all right? First and foremost, let's start with the quarterback position. Jared Goff, Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, all having good weeks. Now, I mentioned this with Russell Wilson this week. I said that he would bounce back. Sure enough, he did against Vegas. 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, okay? Not bad. So Russell Wilson bouncing back, as I said he would. Now, understand, guys, is this going to continue? Potentially. He's finally maybe broken out of that shell because he had a rough first couple weeks. So is he going to bounce back? I say yes. This is a guy that I was suggesting in and around, round 7 in drafts. So I'm hoping that now he's actually broken out of that shell and he's going to bounce back moving forward. Again, his numbers look pretty good here, as you can see, 27.48 fantasy points. So stud of the week, Jared Goff, Geno Smith. And Geno Smith, surprising a lot of people with his performances, doing pretty well, 31.7 points. Obviously, Brady, Allen, Mahomes, Kyler, Daniel Jones, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow here in the top 10. So who sucked at the quarterback position? It's got to be Trevor Lawrence here, 5.66 fantasy points, a guy that people were starting to start because he was relatively consistent the past couple games, okay? He was safe, he was consistent, 25.18 points in week 3, 18.5 in week 2, has been consistent, then he lays an egg here in week 4. So again, I would probably say Trevor Lawrence. Carson Wentz didn't have the greatest game, 7.3 points. So between those guys, I would probably say, I would give it to Trevor Lawrence there, 5.66 points. Unacceptable for people that may have started him thinking that he was going to repeat what he did in week 3. So shame, Trevor Lawrence, unacceptable, 5.66 fantasy points. You should be ashamed of yourself. Again, guys, in the comments, drop it below who you guys think or who was your suck of the week for you guys. Now, studs for running back. I got to take ownership here. Austin Eckler looked great. Okay, so Austin Eckler doing really well, 34.9 fantasy points PPR. Absolutely tore it up. Will this continue? Who knows? I mean, I doubted he was playing Houston, right? So Austin Eckler proving me wrong, giving a good return on investment to fantasy owners, crushing it. Josh Jacobs finishing second here. Again, this is excluding the Monday night game. This is just talking Sunday games. Josh Jacobs had himself a good game. Miles Sanders, Rashad Penny, another guy I was not high on, having the game of his life. So it is what it is. They had a big game, okay? Whatever. Doesn't matter because Dameon Pierce, my guy, had a good game, 25.9 fantasy points. Now, will this continue with Rashad Penny? I don't see it. I see Walker getting more integrated eventually. Rashad has not been able to stay healthy any of the seasons. I don't see it. He had a good game. It happens. I don't think it's sustainable. Well, Dameon Pierce, I do think it's sustainable. I do think he gets the volume. He continues to run. 14 attempts last game, 131 yards and a touchdown. Dameon Pierce, okay, guys? Having himself a good game, 25.9 points. Again, people slept on, didn't talk about him until now. Now they're all loving him, okay? Christian McCaffrey starting to get a return on investment, 25.8 points. Jamal Williams having himself a good game with DeAndre Swift being out. Derrick Henry crushing it, 23.7. Clyde Edwards-Helaire being consistent. And J.K. Dobbins having the game of his life at 22.3 points, okay? And followed by an honorable mention, Nick Chubb. So guys performing well at the running back position. Some guys I like, some guys I didn't like. Some guys that were sleepers, some guys that weren't. But good on them. And Saquon Barkley continues to stay consistent at 18.2 fantasy points. So good news for the running back position. We continue to run wild. Now, who crapped the bed at the running back position? That's the big question. Well, I got to talk about a guy that I was high on. He was high on the consensus rankings, including myself, and that is Najee Harris. Najee Harris should absolutely be ashamed of himself, averaging 4.1 yards per carry, which isn't bad, but only 7.4 fantasy points on 18 attempts, okay? 74 yards, no touchdowns. So Najee Harris. Now, Mitch Trubisky out, Kenny Pickett coming in. Could that help Najee Harris? Possibly, as Pickett could be doing more checkdowns, more throws, short passes to Najee Harris. We don't know. It's still very early to gauge, but he can't be doing any worse. He's been safe, boring at best, even though he's getting the snap counts, even though he's getting the volume. Again, 18 rushing attempts. He's just not doing much with them, even though 74 yards. That's it. There's no receptions there. There's no receptions. There's no receiving touchdowns. There's no rushing touchdowns. You know, you can get, 18 rushing attempts, but if you don't do anything with them, it's very, very sad. So Najee Harris, he has to step up. I think he's the suck of the week at 7.4 fantasy points. Completely unacceptable. Najee Harris, you, sir, are the suck of the week. Honorable mentions here: Antonio Gibson, 9.3 points. A.J. Dillon, 9.4 points. And, everybody that should have done well pretty much did okay. Again, minus the Najee Harris. Javonte Williams got hurt. Travis Etienne, 3.2 points. He sucks. And also James Robinson, 2.9 points. That was really unacceptable there. 8 attempts, 29 yards, 3.6 yards per carry. He crapped the bed as well. James Robinson, I was expecting a lot more out of him as well. So I would say probably James Robinson, Najee, two of my guys crapping the bed. They should be ashamed of themselves. Absolutely ashamed. Moving on to the wide receiver position here. Jefferson doing well. Coming off a 4.4 PPR fantasy point week last week. Jefferson bouncing back 31 points. Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Metcalf, CeeDee Lamb, Josh Reynolds, who we expected having a big game this week with Amon-Ra out, 21.1 points. Marquise Brown, Devontae Adams rounding out the top 10. Devontae Adams having himself yet another safe game here. In regards to touchdowns, didn't get one this game to keep him alive, but he got it done in the receiving game, getting 9 receptions on 13 targets. Good game for Devontae Adams. Guys that crap the bed. Now, with wide receiver, again, it's going to be hit and miss every week, but a guy I keep talking about, been sucking every week, Juju, 9.6 fantasy points. Christian Kirk, one of my guys here, 8.3 fantasy points. Is it terrible? Terrible? Not really, but 8.3 points, really unacceptable for a guy who's a wide receiver one. But again, Trevor Lawrence had a bad game, so it was bad all around. Michael Pittman, very unacceptable here, 6.1 fantasy points, a third-round pick. Not giving his return on investment here. Terrible. Devontae Smith, okay? I think it was raining that game versus Jacksonville, but Philly, Devontae Smith, terrible game, 4.7 fantasy points there. Unacceptable. Drake London, 3.7 fantasy points. Amari Cooper, 1.9 fantasy points. So guys that had big weeks last week, including Amari Cooper, Devontae Smith, absolutely crapping the bed this week. I'm going to go here Amari Cooper at 1.9 fantasy points. Being a wide receiver one on his team, That is unacceptable. Amari Cooper, you, sir, are the suck of the week. Completely unacceptable, all right? Tight ends here, there's a shock here, a shock to the world here. TJ Hawkinson, 39.9 PPR fantasy points. Absolutely amazing. 179 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. Beautiful game. TJ Hawkinson, again, with Amon-Ra out, he really stepped up. Mo Alie-Cox, 26.5 fantasy points. And again, Matt Ryan using those tight ends in those red zone situations, utilizing the height, the big sizes to throw the ball to those big guys, deep down in the red zone. Now, when we look at tight ends, again, I always want those 10 points out of them, so I'm not expecting anything. I'm not disappointed either way. But Darren Waller, 5.4 fantasy points. We talked about this. Adams is going to have a good game. Waller's going to have a bad game, right? So it comes with that. So when Adams has a good game, Waller typically dips down. 5.4 fantasy points. You, sir, are the suck of the week with an honorable mention at 3.5 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is not giving his return on investment. Oh, and I forgot this. Mark Andrews, 3.5 points. So him and Kyle Pitts tied for the sucks of the week. Mark Andrews should be absolutely ashamed of himself, coming off a monster game in week 3 with 28.9 points. Then coming back, getting a 3.5 point game. Mark Andrews, you should be ashamed of yourself. All right, guys? So those are the studs and sucks of the week. Hopefully you guys had a good week. I'm going to be doing a starts and sits so you guys can make sure you guys are subscribed and leave your questions below, so I'm going to get to all of them. By the way, I am growing a beard here. Let me know, beard owners, are you guys liking the beard if you have it? Because I've never really grown one. I'm going to give it a shot here, see how scruffy I look. All right, guys? So let me know. Beard owners, drop a comment. Starts and sits questions going to be coming Thursday. And again, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and drop your sucks of the week below. Thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate you. Keep on trucking. Let's go week 5. Let's win it all. We'll talk soon.